Hi everyone, it's Kara here from Boho Berry, and I'm here today with my very first Q&A video. This is something I'm super excited about. I get asked questions all over the spectrum all day long, and I always struggle to find the time to answer everyone's questions. I get a lot of the same questions over and over again, so I thought it would be a great idea to kind of open up an open forum, ask you guys what you wanted to know, and answer them all today. So I'll probably be doing this as a series, probably about once a month, depending on how many questions I get on a regular basis. I'll still be chatting with you all down in the comments below as usual, but I'll probably save a lot of the bigger answers for this Q&A series each month. Let's get started. I printed these off, and I had over 100 different questions that were asked between YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, on my blog. I even had some of you email me personally, which was really cool and fun. So I compiled a few, and this is about 30 questions. It took up 3 whole pages when I printed it off. So I'm going to try to get through as many as I can today, and I'll also be writing up a companion blog post as usual, and that will answer all of the questions in writing with links to any products I mention or resources, apps, things along those lines. So let's get going. My first question is from Renee G on YouTube. She said, I really want to start a bullet journal, but why do you use a bullet journal rather than a regular planner that already has months and days, spreads, etc.? Also, Jordan Fleming on Instagram asked, why do you prefer bullet journaling over traditional planning? I see these as basically the same question, and that is, why do I like bullet journaling over every other type of planner out there? For me, bullet journaling is all about flexibility. And with a pre-printed planner, I feel like I have to stay within the constraints and within those lines per se. With a bullet journal, I can create my own spread new every day. So if I need a whole page for a day, if I'm really busy that day, or if it's a Sunday and I'm taking the day off and I only need 2 lines, that's all I need to use, and I don't need to worry about leaving blank space or not having enough space. So just the flexibility and adaptability of being able to create as you go and not worry about pre-constructed lines and space is really what drew me to bullet journaling in the first place. Jake H on YouTube asked, what has been the best part of your journaling history career so far? For me, the best part is absolutely the planner community itself, and kind of stumbling into this group of amazing women and gentlemen, but this amazing group of people that just inspire each other daily. There's always so much support within the planner community, fresh ideas coming out, people cheering each other on, asking for advice, getting lots of answers, and I can't tell you how much I love the planner community. It's been by far the best part of starting my bullet journal and this whole journey I've been on this past year. Natasha C on YouTube asked, how do you find pen pals these days? I always loved writing when I was younger, but it's so rare these days. Would love to know. Thanks. For me, the way I found my pen pals is I'm a part of the Bullet Journal Junkies group on Facebook, where we all share pictures of our bullet journals, we share ideas. Anyway, one day, one of the girls decided to create a pen pal group for those of us that wanted to write to each other, write real letters. So she formed this pen pal group, and that's how I found my pen pals. I also found a group for fountain pen enthusiasts on Reddit that's called Fountain Pen Pals, and they do monthly matchups there, and I've been matched up with a couple of new pen pals from that as well. But my recommendation would be to just search in different social media networks and see if you can find groups related to pen pals. There's also some cool websites out there. I can't think of the names off the top of my head, so I will link those down below. But there are some websites specifically dedicated to matching up pen pals. So there's definitely resources out there. A quick Google search should do the trick, but I'll try to link some below for you. All right, Stardock7 on YouTube asked, can you tell me how you set up your camera for recording? Very, very carefully. I think he really wanted to know how I do the downward views when I'm flipping through my bullet journal and things like that. The way you're looking at me right now, you're actually sitting on a tripod and my iPhone is up there recording. But when I do my downward view videos, I actually clear off this entire shelf and I stack it with books. I know, this is getting really technical. And then I have this little mini tripod, which is this guy. I don't know if you can really see it, but it came with a photo box kit that I got a long time ago. But what I do is I just flatten this out and I screw the little attachment for my iPhone on there and I prop it up in between my books and face the camera down, and that's how I record in that downward view. It's really very technical and you have to be very tech savvy to figure it out. So yeah, one of my goals this year is definitely to improve my filming setup. So I'm looking forward to not having to rig that up every time I record. Okay, Todd F. over on the blog asked, I've become a fan of your blog and bullet journal. How do you handle note-taking, say for meetings or telephone calls in your bullet journal? Or do you have a separate notebook you use for notes and keep the bullet journal for planning and organization? Thanks. For notes and the like, I really just take notes as I go in my bullet journal. If it's an important meeting or phone call that I want to keep the ideas organized, a lot of times I'll just have a separate notepad on my desk and just kind of scribble and jot things down as the meeting or phone call is happening. And then I'll transcribe it in a more organized way into my bullet journal. So I actually use this pink notepad, and you can see it's very scribbly and not very pretty. Besides the pink color, which is adorable. But yeah, it's very scribbly. I just kind of take down my notes there and then I transcribe them into my bullet journal in a more organized way. And then what I do is I simply index those notes. So say it's an important phone call regarding a guest post deadline. I'll write guest post for blah, 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 deadline, put the date, write all the notes, and then I'll index that in the front of my bullet journal. So hopefully that makes sense for you. All right, Ram on Facebook asked, is there a specific time that you bullet journal, mark tasks off and such, or do you journal throughout the day? Sally Go Lightly on Instagram also asked a similar question. She said, what's the best time of day to bullet journal for you? I actually wrote up a whole blog post on this recently, which is called My Planning Routine. If you go to www.bohoberry.com, you'll see that it's one of my most recent blog posts. But essentially, my planning routine is like this. The night before is when I do most of my planning. I draw out my header for the next day. I list down all my tasks that I'm migrating that were undone from previous days. I add additional tasks, and then I go to bed. In the morning, I'll look at it, add more tasks if needed. But throughout the day, I am in there. I am marking things off, adding more things that I can think of. I don't really limit myself to just the morning and evening. So throughout the day, if I think of something, it's going in my bullet journal immediately. Another question I got along the same lines was about what I do if I'm out and about and I need to make a note. And normally I don't have my bullet journal with me if I'm, say, in the grocery store. So what I would do then is I actually have on my iPhone, I have a notes app and I have a note entitled Bullet Journal. And if I'm out and about and I don't have access to my notebook at that time, I will just type in whatever it is, and then I always remember when I get home to look into my notes and see if there's anything I need to move in there. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of my planning routine and how I get things done. All right. Millie Davely on Instagram asked, do fountain pens leak ink when you're writing, causing your fingers and hands to be stained? I have really never had an issue with that. I have had inky fingers, but that's just because I'm a total newbie to the fountain pen world. I really just started in November. I've had some inky fingers shortly after inking up my pens. So in general, once they're inked up and good to go, no, I do not have any leaking issues. Am I a mess sometimes? Absolutely. So if you want some really good tips, by the way, for fountain pens, if you're just starting out with fountain pens, definitely check out Goulet Pens here on YouTube, and I'll link to them below as well. But I have learned so much through Brian's videos, and I literally could sit there all day and watch him talk fountain pens. It's crazy. But I love fountain pens that much, and he's just such a wealth of information, and the entire team there at Goulet, they're awesome. Simply awesome. So yeah, link them below if you're interested in starting out with fountain pens. They're a great, great resource. Okay, Pink Rose Company on Instagram asked, do you keep old/full bullet journals and look back at them? Yes, I do. I just started bullet journaling last August. So my very first bullet journal actually got filled up in December, and that was this emerald one right here. And so what I've done is I put a archival sticker on the front. So it says bullet journal August through December of 2015. I've got a little label on the side as well. And yes, I definitely flipped through it. Every now and then I'll remember something that was in here that I need to reference, so I'll come back and reference that. What I am going to be doing very, very soon is scanning all of the collections, not necessarily my daily to-dos and stuff like that, but my big collections, goal setting, stuff that I want to reference back to over and over again. I'm going to scan this into Evernote so that I can access it easily on the go without having to come up to my office and look through the book. But I do intend on keeping these, absolutely, for posterity and all that jazz. All right, who is next? Couponer214 on Instagram says, do you journal in between daily pages, or do you have a journal just for your journaling? Also, now that you have 2 bullet journals, how do you sync ideas, projects, and schedules? Okay, so as far as journaling goes, I really don't journal a whole lot in the traditional sense. So I don't write pages upon pages, I don't write paragraphs. I simply will write a note here and there about something that happened that day. Also, what I consider one of my main journaling aspects in my bullet journal itself is my gratitude log. So I do review that daily, but it's on its own little spread and not mixed in with my daily tasks, if that makes sense. Then your second question. Oh, now that I have 2 bullet journals. So yes, I now have my normal everyday bullet journal, and then I have my blog and business bullet journal. The way that I keep everything synced up is I actually just keep all of my scheduling and to-dos and daily tasks lists. Those all stay in my personal bullet journal, which is this blue one right here. What my blog and business journal contains is my editorial calendar, ideas for blog posts, ideas for YouTube. It's where I outline my blog posts before I write them for the blog. And I also have things in there like a writing log for the year, a time log to kind of track where my time goes every day. The blog and business bullet journal is really just full of collections related to my blog and business. All of my actual planning and organizing happens in my personal bullet journal still, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, ask me below and I'll happily clarify. And who's next? Danny Masio on Instagram asked, what is the best pen for someone who likes to write thick with no bleed? This is kind of a loaded question, Danny, and I'll tell you why. A, I can only comment based on the pens that I have used and loved. B, it all depends on your paper as well. So depending on what kind of notebook you have, if it's higher paper quality, that's all going to affect the bleed, not just the pen that you're using. But the pens that I recommend, given that you have good quality paper, is my Faber-Castell, my Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens. These are my absolute favorite. They come in different sizes. This one is actually the S, which is a 0.3, so it's probably a little thinner than what you're looking for. However, they do have an F, which is a 0.5, a M or medium, which is a 0.7, which is a nice thick bold line, and I think all of those come in one set of 4. So it's awesome. I love it. Highly recommend it. It does ghost a little bit, but there is absolutely no bleed through. Another one you might want to look into is Stettler pigment liners, which I think I have a few of these. Because I use these a lot when I'm drawing my mandalas, but these are nice thick bold lines as well. they're really pretty much on par with the Faber-Castell. Hopefully that answers your question, but again, it's really gonna depend on the quality of your paper as well. So if these pens bleed for you on just regular cheap copy paper or something like that, that's why. It's the paper quality that also makes a big difference with bleeding or not. Okay, iPlan05 on Instagram asked, who inspires you the most in the bullet journal world and why? So I actually have two people. One is Ryder Carroll, of course. Ryder Carroll is the designer. He's based out of New York City, and he's a designer that invented the bullet journal system and put it out into the world. I will be forever, forever grateful to him for putting his work out there so freely and sharing it so openly with everyone. So Ryder Carroll, definitely. And then probably my biggest inspiration is Kim Alvarez. Kim runs the blog Tiny Ray of Sunshine, and you can find her at tinyrayofsunshine.com. I'll link to her in the show notes below as well. But Kim has this magical way of putting something onto the page, making it look simple, not overly decorated, just simple, beautiful, but oh so useful. She comes up with these spreads that you just look at it and you go, yes, that is what I needed. Thank you so much. She has a way of figuring things out, making things work, and it's genius. I just love her to pieces. So definitely check Kim out. She's probably my biggest inspiration in the bullet journal world. All right, who do I have next? Home is what you make it on Instagram. When do we get to see more of your blog and business bullet journal? Very interested in keeping two as well. Yes, I will actually have the full video and blog post about my blog and business bullet journal coming out next Friday. It's going to be a long one because I have a lot to explain in there, my reasonings behind things, and the blog post is going to be just absolutely chock full of pictures. It's kind of ridiculous. So stay tuned. Next Friday, January, whatever that is, January 22nd, I think. Don't quote me on it. But yes, next Friday I will have that video out for you all. So you won't be waiting too much longer. If you want little sneak peeks along the way, keep an eye on my Instagram account. I'll be posting little sneak peeks throughout the week, okay? All right, Jen Shirio on Instagram asked, how do you plan for future events in your bullet journal? Huge question. I get it asked it all the time. Honestly, it's really, really simple. I keep a future log. That future log for me is really just to note down big important events. So things like appointments is what people struggle with the most, I feel like. I actually keep a separate iCal calendar on my laptop and on my phone that I share with my husband. And any events or appointments that are coming up, they automatically go into iCal first. They go into that shared family calendar. Now, as the new month approaches, that is what I look at mainly when I'm filling in the new month's events and appointments. So I look at that shared calendar first, and then I add in anything else I can think of. But when I'm doing my nightly planning, like say I have an appointment, I made an appointment to take my dog to the vet next week. Obviously, next week is still in January. I would just go ahead and write that in the January monthly spread. Another way that I've seen people handle future planning in the bullet journal is to use a post-it note system. So if you have something that's coming up within the next couple of weeks, you can just write that on a post-it note and stick it into your bullet journal on whatever day you're on, and just keep moving that post-it note forward with you so that you can see all of your near future appointments that are coming up, if that makes sense. Then once you get to the day of that appointment, you can write that into your task list for that day. Okay, let's see. Ellie Bartram on Instagram again. What did you want to be when you grew up? Okay, I was kind of hoping there would be some fun personal questions like this, and I'm really glad that you asked that question, Ellie. Okay, let's start from when I was a little kid. I wanted to be a rock star. I thought that rock stars were just the coolest thing in the world. Now, granted, I was growing up in the early to mid 80s, so my version of a rock star was men dressed like women and makeup and crazy hair and all that like just crazy like Pat Benatar. And so that's the kind of rock star that I wanted to be, just to put that out there. As I grew older, when I went to high school, I actually joined choir and joined chamber choir and absolutely loved it. And my dream at that point was to be on Broadway and be a big Broadway star in a musical somewhere. I still love to sing, however, I don't train anymore, I don't practice anymore, I don't go to auditions or anything like that. But yeah, that was my big plan. So you can see how well that worked out for me. All right, next, Multigraphy, I hope I'm saying that right, on Instagram. How do you handle messing up in your journal? I am such a perfectionist and I hate making mistakes. Okay, this is something that I get a lot, and I actually mess up quite often. And what I do, if it's a really bad mess up and it's gonna drive me just insane and really grind my gears, what I will do is just put an X through it and turn the page. I just act like that page doesn't exist. I turn it so it's out of sight, out of mind. Most of the time I just have little mistakes, like I wrote down, when I was doing my blog and business bullet journal, I was setting up the calendars, and I think it's in the month of April. I wrote Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Sunday. I skipped Saturday altogether. So for the month of April, I'm gonna have 2 Sundays every week, and that just kind of makes me giggle. I didn't try to fix it, I didn't try to go over it. I'm just gonna leave it as is. There's a lot of different ways to fix mistakes in your bullet journal though. You can use whiteout, you can cover it with washi tape, you can cut out a piece of scrapbook paper in a fun shape and put it over there. Honestly, mistakes are gonna happen. That's part of the organicness, is that a word? That's part of the organic feel of the bullet journal to me, is that it's personal. It's not made by a machine, it's made by you. And mistakes happen, no one's perfect. I have loads of mistakes in my bullet journal. I actually posted a collage, I think it was last month, on Instagram of all of the little tiny mistakes that I could find that day in my bullet journal. So just because you see all these pretty planners out there does not mean that those people don't make mistakes and that they're always perfect. We all make mistakes. You just have to learn to let go. Don't worry about it too much. Just try to be better the next time and move on. Turn the page, okay? Okay. All right. Quiet Life Gypsy says, what would you recommend to someone who wants to do Miracle Morning but has a very random schedule? Okay, so I talk about Miracle Morning a lot. And in case you don't know what it is, which I get a lot of questions on that as well, Miracle Morning was a book written by Hal Elrod, and it's basically outlines 6 things to do in the morning. So it's a morning routine to start off on your best foot and have your most productive day. And these 6 steps, doesn't matter what order you do them in, doesn't matter how long it takes you to do them. The point is to get up a little earlier than usual every morning, go through your morning routine and start your day off running. So I will link to my blog post where I described everything for you below. But to answer your question, if you have a variable schedule and you want to do the Miracle Morning, my biggest recommendation is don't worry about what time you do it. So yes, it's preferable to wake up at the same time every day, but don't let your inability to do that keep you from doing the work. And the work is those actual steps and that morning routine. So if you wake up at 8 a.m. one day and 10 a.m. the next day, my point is just make a commitment to yourself to go through your Miracle Morning routine whenever it is that you wake up, okay? Okay. Abby Steer on Instagram asked, what about if you're super busy for a couple of days? How do you find time to sit and make those days pretty? So my bullet journal, yes, it's pretty and I like making it pretty. The fact that it is pretty is one of the things that motivates me to actually use it. And by use it, I mean use it as the tool that it is. It is ultimately a way to plan and organize my life. On days that I'm super busy, I just don't make it pretty. That's it. I just don't make it pretty. Now, that's not to say that 2 days later, when it's a Sunday and I'm doing nothing but watching Netflix with my husband, that's not to say I'm not going to go back and make that page pretty or I might leave it. I don't know. But if I'm too busy to make it pretty, I'm just not gonna make it pretty. One thing I will say is that with my planning routine, the way it works, I do this at night before I go to bed. So about half an hour before I go to sleep, I just sit down with my bullet journal, I draw out my header for the next day, I draw in the weather, you know, all those little things that I do to make it pretty. I do those the night before, and I never miss that time at night. I always make sure that I sit down with my bullet journal before I go to bed. So that being said, most days when I wake up, it's already pretty. If that makes sense. Stacy J. Rowley on Instagram asked, would you ever consider making a pre-made bullet journal with all your cute handwriting, mandalas, etc.? Something to sell for us uncutesy handwriters, but still get the full effect of having a bullet journal. My initial gut reaction is no. The reason why is that the bullet journal is such a personal tool. I feel like if there's already things set up in there for you, what makes it a bullet journal then? The idea is making it your own, coming up with your own style, using it to your specifications, not mine. So if I go in there and I create some layouts for you and I sell that, it's not really a bullet journal anymore. That's just like any other planet on the market at that point. Now, do I love the idea of creating my own planner with my doodles and mandalas and handwriting? Absolutely. I will never, ever, ever market it as a bullet journal or anything similar to that though. So I hope that answers your question. My recommendation, if you want all those pretty things in your bullet journal, you can practice your handwriting. I did a video about how I've practiced and improved my handwriting. And as far as I've actually done a video on how I draw my mandalas as well, so you could learn how to do that. I also offer free printables of my mandalas. So if you ever wanted to print one off and paste it into your bullet journal, you could do that as well. But I will never be making a bullet journal with my designs in it for sale, okay? All right. Kat Ingalls on Instagram asked, I'd love to know if you used or still use any digital apps to keep organized along with your notebook. For example, Trello, worksheets, spreadsheets, etc. Yes, I absolutely use Trello and love it. I use Trello to manage my blog editorial calendar. I use Trello to manage big projects and tasks. That's not to say I don't do those things in my bullet journal as well, but Trello is such a free-flowing system that it's really nice and easy to move things around. You don't get that flexibility when you have things written down on paper. So I love Trello for that reason. Another app that I use is called Productive, and I'll link that below for you as well, but it's basically a habit tracker for your phone. I believe that it's only on iOS, I'm not sure. And what it does is it just lists out all of your habits for the day. You can set your specific habits that you want to track. You can tell it how often you want to track them, and if you want to do it morning, evening, whatever you want, however you want to set it up. And then throughout the day, you just go through and swipe right to say that you've accomplished that task, and then it kind of keeps a running list for you. So it's really cool, like you kind of get to see how long it's been that you've been maintaining a certain habit, etc., etc. So that's kind of fun. I wouldn't say it's a necessary app, but I love it. And then one more that I use and love is called A Tracker, and A Tracker is a time tracking app. So what you do is you set it up with different activities that you do throughout the day, and you just tap on those activities as you start and finish them, and it gives you a time report of how you spent your day. So I love that for productivity. It's made me a lot more aware of where my days are going, and it's made me kind of really focus my time. So for example, one of my activities is getting on social media, and I try not to be on social media more than 30 minutes at a time throughout the day because I can get lost forever. So yeah, I have that set up, and I have it set up with an alert. So if I hit social media and I start browsing around on Facebook, Pinterest, I go to Reddit, and go all over the place. And once 30 minutes has passed, it's gonna yell at me or beep at me. It's more like beeping, but I consider it yelling. Now, if I ignore that first alert, it's going to beep at me again another 30 minutes later. So it's kind of cool. It kind of keeps you on task, keeps you focused. Love it. Again, that one is called A Tracker, and I'll link that below too. Inky Quill on Instagram asks, do you have any other creative outlets or hobbies? Yes, I have a lot. I've always been a super creative person. I make jewelry, which I'm sure a lot of you know through my links. You've probably found my Etsy shop, but I make jewelry, which I absolutely love. I do like boho style leather wrap bracelets and mala necklaces for meditation and stuff like that. So that's one of my biggest hobbies. I absolutely love it. I also am a knitter. I learned how to knit and crochet when I was pregnant with my daughter back in 2006. And I've never really stopped then. So I've made everything from blankets, hats, scarves, sweaters, socks, gloves, mittens, everything. I love to knit. Love to knit. I do know how to crochet too, and I use it for certain projects here and there, but knitting is totally my thing. And I actually spin yarn as well. I have a really pretty spinning wheel that I absolutely adore. And I actually haven't spun yarn in about a year, but I love it, so I'm gonna get back into that soon. What else besides that? Creative hobbies. I like to read a lot, and I'm actually gonna start getting into my Wreck This journal that I ordered in the mail. And that's this little guy, which I'm actually gonna start a series here on the channel for you all for the Wreck This journal to kind of walk you through how I'm doing that. But you can see I have kind of started, one of the prompts in it was to decorate the edges. So I've kind of started on that in my own little style. But yeah, so this is going to be a big creative hobby and creative outlet over the next few months. So stay tuned for this. Shannon Garcia on Instagram asks, do you think or come up with all the type of journal entries that you do, or do you find inspiration from others? It's kind of a mix, Shannon. A lot of times I'll be browsing around and looking for ideas specifically, and I always try to adapt those ideas and kind of make them my own, although I do gain inspiration from a lot of other bullet journalists out there for sure. I also get a lot of inspiration from planning printables that I find online. So say I'm trying to do a spread to track my meal planning in my bullet journal, for example. I will actually go and search for meal planning printables just to kind of get an idea of how other people organize that information, not necessarily just in the bullet journal community, in the bullet journal world, but in the planning community as a whole. So I get my inspiration like that from several different places. A few of the spreads I absolutely come up with on my own, but ultimately there's nothing new under the sun. I really believe that. And I really believe that everything has been done before. It's just all about how you do it personally. So I always try to make everything that I find, I try to make it my own, give it my own spin, make it my style. And I always try to link back to whoever inspired me to begin with for whatever that was. So one of my big ones actually is my gratitude journal, and I absolutely love that. I wrote a whole blog post about it, but that original idea I got from Kim, Tiny Ray of Sunshine, who I mentioned earlier, but I got that from her, and every time I talk about my gratitude journal, I'm like, hey, by the way, special thanks to my bestie Kim, because she's awesome for coming up with this idea. So while I absolutely encourage you to gain inspiration from others, I also absolutely encourage you to give credit where credit is due. Adria S. Folk on Instagram asked, hello, I love your bracelets. Thank you. Can you talk about how you started making them? Sure. I'm kind of addicted to new projects. And you can ask my husband this. I have started so many different new things. Because what'll happen is I'll see a video on YouTube or I'll see a picture of something and go, hey, I can make that. And then I'll research how to make it, and then I'll start making it, and I'll be obsessed with it for like 2 or 3 months. And then it normally goes by the wayside after that. So bracelet making and jewelry making in general stemmed from one of those little stints where I was like, oh, I can totally make that. And once I realized how much I loved making them and I started getting compliments all the time on them, that's when I decided to open my Etsy shop, and it's just kind of grown from there. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how I started making them. It really was pretty recently. It was about a year ago that I started making jewelry, but I absolutely love it, and I've come to discover that I'm pretty good at it. So, okay. All right, this is the last one, folks. Jeanette Snam I think, on Instagram asked, did you do any other forms of planning before the bullet journal? What kind of planning technique would you use if the bullet journal system never existed? Yes, I did some planning before the bullet journal. A few years ago, I actually used the Franklin Covey system, which I really liked. And honestly, I just kind of fell off the wagon with it because anything pre-printed to me, if I didn't use it for a couple of days for some reason, I would just feel super guilty about that blank space, and I would just, honestly, I would just stop. I would freeze and just not plan anymore. I did the same thing with several different day planners, things along those lines. I tried a big desk calendar. I've tried several different things. I've tried doing my planning all electronically on my phone or on my laptop. None of that really worked either. But I have always been a huge fan of notebooks, and I've always had a notebook laying around where I jot down all of my ideas. So when I saw the bullet journal system, immediately it clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, this is a way to use what I've always used, which is a notebook, and organize it in a way that it will actually help me as a planner itself. If the bullet journal system had never existed, what would I be using? I'm hoping that I would have figured something out by now, but I would probably still just be floating from planner to planner, to be honest. Yeah, sad, but true. All right, so that was all of the questions that I had for today. And I do have a lot more questions that I wasn't able to get to, so if I was not able to get to your question, I sincerely apologize. I can't wait to talk to you again next week when we're going to be talking about my blog and business bullet journal. I will definitely be having more of these Q&As, so I'll keep adding more and more questions to the list. If there's anything that you'd like to know, feel free to comment below. I hope I answered all your questions to your satisfaction, and I can't wait to see you next week. Bye!